The galaxy stood strangely quiet, like every star was holding its breath and every world felt something coming that it could not understand. Far above a dying blue star floated the Crystal Dominion Hall, a massive throne chamber carved from living crystal that shimmered like frozen lightning. Inside, 12 towering thrones circled a glowing table of pure energy. These were the galactic rulers, the self-proclaimed masters of millions of species who believed nothing in the universe could ever challenge them. For centuries, they commanded everything: trade routes, star laws, ancient armadas, and the galaxy obeyed them out of fear, not respect. Nothing had changed that. Nothing had threatened their rule. Until today, their attention stayed locked on a giant floating screen pulsing in front of them. It showed a small human fleet entering the forbidden nebula gate, its blue lights cutting through swirling clouds of cosmic dust. The fleet moved calmly, without weapons raised, without any sign of fear. They were explorers, brave, curious humans searching for new stars. But in the eyes of the rulers, that calm confidence looked like disrespect. And disrespect was something they had never tolerated. Emperor Zaltor sat upon the central throne, his skeletal fingers wrapped around a glowing staff, his cracked, metallic skin shining under the cold crystal light. For years he had feared the rise of humanity. They were expanding fast, learning faster, and uniting their worlds with a strength no other species had ever shown. He hated that humans never bowed. He hated that they never begged. He hated that they stood together like a single unbreakable wall. His lips twisted into a cruel smirk as he leaned forward, speaking in a voice that echoed like a dead star collapsing. Humanity is growing too fast. They do not fear us anymore. Today, we remind them who commands this galaxy. The hall erupted in loud cheers. Alien generals slammed their weapons against the crystal floor. Ministers lifted their six-fingered hands in celebration. Some creatures roared, others hissed, their joy echoing off the high crystal pillars. They believed the humans were nothing special, just another young species full of hope, courage, and foolish dreams. The rulers had crushed thousands like them before. Why should this be any different? But in the far corner of the hall stood an old advisor named Varluin. His body shook softly, his eyes dim with terror, his voice trembling as he whispered, "Do not provoke humans, my emperor. They are not like the others. They defend each other. Their unity is dangerous." Silence flickered for only a moment before the hall burst into mocking laughter. Some slapped the old advisor on the back. Others called him weak. Others dismissed him as a coward too old to understand strength. Zaltor did not even look at him. He waved a hand, and the glowing screen changed, zooming onto a single small Terran science vessel drifting near the nebula gate. It carried 20 humans, scientists, explorers, and a few young officers learning about the unknown. They were not soldiers. They were not even armed. They were simply doing what humans did better than anyone else, seeking knowledge. Zaltor raised his staff. "Destroy that vessel. Publicly. Let humanity see what happens when they step where they should not." With a sharp command, a fleet of armored drones launched from the ruler's defense towers, crossing the star field in seconds. No warning. No chance to escape. A beam of crackling red energy shot forward and punched through the hull of the human ship as if it was made of paper. The explosion lit up the nebula gate in brilliant fire, scattering burning metal into the clouds. The attack was not silent. It was broadcasted across every major communication network in the galaxy. Billions watched the small Terran vessel burn. Billions watched 20 innocent humans die instantly. Billions heard the mocking voices of the rulers as they announced, "Let this be a reminder. The galaxy belongs to us. Humanity will bow or it will break." Some alien worlds cheered. Some stayed silent. Some looked away. But most of the galaxy laughed, believing nothing would happen next. The rulers had done this hundreds of times before. No species had ever dared to rise against them. No species had ever struck back. No species had ever gone beyond complaining or begging. But humanity was different. When the broadcast reached Earth, something strange happened. Earth did not respond. Earth did not send a warning. Earth did not shout or threaten. Earth simply went silent. Completely, utterly, terrifyingly silent. The laughter across the galaxy quickly faded as confusion replaced arrogance. Because everyone, even the smallest child on distant worlds, knew one truth. Humans were loud, emotional, expressive beings. They argued, debated, fought, laughed, cried, but they never stayed silent. Silence was not in their nature. So when Earth fell into absolute silence, something began to feel wrong. One by one, human communication channels shut down. First the colony signals, then the research stations, then the military beacons, then the diplomatic frequencies. Human outposts, known for their constant chatter, darkened like candles being extinguished one by one. Even the huge trading hubs, always full of noise, went dead. Deep inside alien trade centers, merchants panicked as their human partners suddenly stopped responding. On border planets, alien guards watched human patrol ships turn off their lights and drift quietly toward home. Across hundreds of worlds, Terran consulates locked their doors without saying a word. It was like humanity had taken a deep breath. A long, cold, silent breath. Rumors spread faster than light. Humans are preparing something. Humans are angry. Humans never go silent unless they are planning. Something huge is coming. Fear crawled through the galaxy like a shadow growing longer with every passing hour. Even those who once laughed at humans now whispered nervously under their breath. They remembered stories told long ago. Stories about human stubbornness, human sacrifice, human unity under threat. Stories about how humanity survived extinction-level events by holding each other up. Stories about how humans fought until the last breath if someone hurt their people. In the Crystal Hall, the rulers waited for humanity to send a message. Maybe a warning, maybe a threat, maybe even a diplomatic request for peace. Anything, but nothing came. Zaltor watched the silent networks with a tightening jaw. Why do they not respond? His ministers shrugged, confused. Perhaps they fear us. But deep down, even they didn't believe their own words anymore. Somewhere in the galaxy, ships whispered across the void, sending coded signals that no alien could break. Terran factories lit up with a new fire. Old shipyards reopened, their ancient gates unlocking for the first time in decades. Neural satellites aligned across star systems. Old veterans returned to military bases, standing tall in their old uniforms. Young recruits trained harder than ever before. And still, not a single human voice echoed through the stars. Varluin, the old advisor, stepped cautiously toward Zaltor, his voice shaking. Emperor, when humanity is loud, they are only angry. But when humanity goes silent, they are preparing. And when they prepare, someone pays a terrible price. Zaltor growled. Humans are weak, Varluin whispered. Then why do you fear them so much? The question hit the Emperor like a sword. He slammed his staff into the crystal floor, but even that crack of power could not erase the truth settling in the air. Everyone in the hall felt it. A growing tension. A quiet storm forming far away. Humanity had not surrendered. Humanity had not bowed. Humanity had not begged. Humanity had gone silent. And the galaxy finally remembered a law older than any throne, older than any empire, older than any ruler. Fear moved across the galaxy like a cold wave as every alien world felt the same strange tension growing in the air. It was not loud, it was not explosive, it was not even violent. Yet it was heavier than any weapon. Because the silence of humanity did not feel like weakness. It felt like a warning wrapped in calm. For the first time in centuries, powerful species who feared nothing suddenly found themselves watching the stars with restless eyes, wondering when the silence would break and what shape it would take when it finally did. Every station, every patrol ship, every diplomatic hall whispered the same question. Why are the humans silent? No one had an answer, and that made it more terrifying. On the far side of the Havlon sector, a young alien scout named Rikar flew his small patrol craft near the human borders. He was curious, nervous, and too inexperienced to understand what was truly happening. But even he felt something unnatural in the air. His ship sensors detected a faint shadow drifting behind the asteroids. When he turned his craft carefully and looked through the thick glass, his heart almost stopped. A massive Terran dreadnought floated silently among the rocks. No lights, no signals, no movement. Just a quiet giant watching him like an eye that never blinked. It was a ship so large that the asteroids around it looked like dust. Stories called these ships Eclipse class, but no one truly believed they existed. Ricard blinked to clear his vision, and in that single blink, the dreadnought was gone. Completely gone. No engine trail, no distortion, nothing. Just empty space. Ricard screamed into the comms. Humans are here. They are moving. But his message reached only static. Terran technology was blocking his signal not with violence but with cold precision. His ship drifted helplessly as he whispered to himself, "They saw me. Then they disappeared. This is not normal. This is not normal at all." His report reached the Galactic Rulers' Council only as fragments, broken and jittering. The generals dismissed it as fear from a young scout. The ministers called it sensor malfunction. The rulers laughed nervously. But deep inside their hearts, a crack began to grow. If humans truly had ships like that in the shadows, then they were not hiding, they were observing. They were measuring. They were preparing. Zaltor slammed his staff again and shouted, "Humans do not scare us. Their silence is meaningless." But even as he spoke, he felt something cold settle in his chest. He had seen the human rise before. He had witnessed their strange resilience, their unity, their refusal to break. Humans did not crumble like other species. They became stronger. They became harder. They bonded with each other like blood forged in fire. And when they grieved, they did not cry alone. They rose together. Meanwhile, on Earth itself, the silence was not emptiness. It was focus. Cities across the planet glowed like forges in the night. Factories that had been quiet for years now roared with life. Spaceports filled with engineers, pilots, scientists, and soldiers moving with unshakable purpose. There was no panic on Earth, no chaos, no shouting. Instead, a deep and heavy determination wrapped the entire planet. Families stood together, watching the stars with tear-filled eyes. Parents held their children close, knowing humanity was stepping into another storm. Old veterans polished medals they swore they would never wear again. Young recruits trained until they collapsed, then stood up again with fire in their eyes. Humanity had not responded with fear, they responded with unity. Across Terran colonies, the same silence spread like a chain reaction. Miners from Red Rock worlds sent transport ships loaded with or to the shipyards without being asked. Farmers from distant moons donated their harvest to feed soldiers. Scientists worked sleepless nights in underground labs, unlocking new shields, new weapons, new engines. Even convicts in Terran prison worlds volunteered for labor duty, wanting to serve the same species that never abandoned its own. Every heart beat with one emotion, grief mixed with fury. The 20 humans who died at the Nebula Gate were not strangers. They were family. They were humanity. And every human took their deaths personally. The galaxy had seen human anger before, but this was different. This was not shouting, not roaring, not explosive rage. This was quiet fire. This was the kind of fire that burned steady until it consumed everything in its way. And the galaxy finally realized, humans were not preparing for revenge. They were preparing for justice. Rumors grew stronger every hour. Alien captains reported ghost signals around uncharted sectors. Massive shapes moving quietly between stars. Merchant ships claimed they saw Terran medical frigates traveling toward border systems with no explanation. Entire human fleets vanished from public maps. It was like humanity was dissolving into space, turning into a shadow that no one could catch, a force that no one could measure. And that made the silence even harder to breathe through. Inside the crystal hall, Zaltor paced restlessly. For the first time, cracks appeared on his perfect confidence. He wanted humanity to beg. He wanted humanity to kneel. He wanted humanity to scream. But instead, they gave him nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just silence. And the silence was eating him alive. His generals whispered among themselves, hiding their fear behind forced laughter. His ministers avoided eye contact. Even the guards seemed uneasy, constantly turning toward the doors as if expecting something to appear. Finally, the old advisor Varluin stepped forward again, his voice soft but shaking with emotion. "Emperor, you have made a mistake that cannot be undone. Humans mourn quietly. Humans prepare quietly. Humans rise quietly. If they have not spoken yet, then they are still gathering strength." Zaltor growled. "Strength means nothing next to our fleets." Varluin shook his head slowly. "You misunderstand. The humans do not gather ships. They gather hearts. And no army in the galaxy can defeat a species that fights for each other." The words hit the hall like thunder. Some generals shifted uncomfortably. Some ministers lowered their eyes, because they all knew the truth buried inside those words. Humanity did not unify for glory or power or territory. They unified out of love. Love for their kin, love for their colonies, love for the strangers who shared their sky. A species like that did not break easily. A species like that did not surrender. A species like that became unstoppable once wounded. And now, they were wounded. In the shadows of the galaxy, a coded Terran message echoed between black satellites. For simple words, "Prepare for Phase 1. No alien could decode it. No alien could trace it. But they felt it. Even without understanding, they felt it. Because the silence of humanity was no longer just silence. It was the quiet before the storm. A storm the galaxy had never seen before. A storm that would rewrite everything. A storm that began with 20 humans and would end with 12 rulers learning the true meaning of fear. The galaxy tried to pretend everything was normal, but every star lane felt heavier, every communication tower buzzed with nervous static, and every commander across hundreds of worlds stared at their scanners with wide, restless eyes. Humanity still had not spoken. Not a single message. Not a single warning. Not a single threat. It was as if Earth and all Terran colonies took a deep breath together and then simply disappeared behind a curtain of silence. But the silence did not feel empty. It felt like pressure building in the darkness. The slow gathering of a force too controlled to reveal itself too soon. The galactic rulers finally decided they could not sit and wait. They ordered their elite fleets to move toward human borders. Armored warships, glowing with deadly energy, filled the star lanes like a river of fire. Thousands of soldiers cheered as they marched inside their vessels, certain that the humans would panic when they saw such overwhelming power. But deep inside, even veteran officers felt something strange. An ache, a nervous pulse, as if they were walking toward a storm they could not see. The fleet spread across the Terran border, thinking they had humans cornered. But nothing prepared them for what they saw next. Floating peacefully in the middle of the darkness was a single Terran ship, black, colossal, silent. It was the Arc-Titan Eclipse, a vessel whispered about in tall tales and war legends but never confirmed. Some believed it was only a myth created by human storytellers. Others believed it was a relic too powerful to exist. But now, here it was, the size of a small moon, drifting without weapons raised, without shields glowing, without fear. Every alien captain froze. The ship's hull absorbed light like it was built from the shadow of a dying star. Strange silver veins pulsed along the surface as if the ship itself was alive. It did not aim its cannons. It did not move toward them. It just stared. And something about that silent stare made the alien soldiers feel like small children standing before a giant who was deciding whether to spare them or crush them. No one dared to fire. No one dared to speak. The entire elite fleet, trained for war, ready for destruction, found themselves staring at a ship that said nothing but meant everything. Then the Eclipse activated a broadcast. Not a voice, not a threat, not even a word, just an image. The hologram flickered in front of every enemy ship, showing the destroyed Terran science vessel. The burned hull, the drifting bodies, the silent explosion, the 20 humans who died without a single weapon in their hands. It was a simple message, but the silence around it suffocated every soldier watching. For the first time, Alien commanders felt shame crawl slowly into their chests. But the galactic rulers, watching from their distant thrones, screamed for attack. "Fire at once," Emperor Zaltor commanded, his voice cracking with frustration. "Destroy their illusion of power." And so the first shot was fired. A massive beam of crimson energy shot across the void, cutting through meteors and tearing a straight line toward the eclipse. But something impossible happened. The beam bent, like light bending around a black hole, like time bowing in fear. It curved smoothly around the eclipse's hull and vanished into nothing, leaving not even a spark behind. Every alien heart stopped beating for a moment. No one had ever seen physics itself bend to a ship's will. And that was when the eclipse finally spoke. Not with a roar, not with anger, but with a soft human voice that echoed across thousands of channels, calm as still water. "You challenged humanity. Now face the consequences." The words pierced deeper than any weapon. The eclipse moved not fast, not aggressively, but with terrifying precision. The ship disappeared for a breath, and reappeared behind the elite fleet without the sound of engines, without the ripple of space distortion. It was like the ship simply changed its mind about where it existed. Alien captains screamed commands, trying to lock onto the human ship, but their radars collapsed into static. Their weapons powered down without reason. Their shields flickered. It felt like someone was gently taking apart their entire fleet piece by piece. Then the eclipse fired, not to kill but to disable. Thin beams of white light shot out silently, cutting through engines, melting cannons without explosions, severing power cores without harming a single soldier. Warships that once inspired terror were now drifting helplessly like toys in water. Soldiers ran across decks, screaming, trying to reboot systems that no longer answered them. Commanders cried out for support that would never reach them. The eclipse could have destroyed every ship instantly. But it didn't, because humanity was furious but not cruel. Their message was clear. "We fight for justice, not domination. We are not like you, but we will not forgive what you did." Inside the Crystal Dominion Hall, shock finally shattered the arrogance of the rulers. Their thrones vibrated as the disabled fleet sent frantic reports. Zaltor stared at the floating holoscreen, his hands shaking as he watched the eclipse dismantle his strongest armada like removing dust from a table. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Humans do not have such power." Varluin, the old advisor, stepped forward with tears gathering in his ancient eyes. "They did not have it yesterday, but they have it today. Humans grow when threatened. They evolve faster under pressure. You attacked their heart, Emperor, and now their heart has awakened." The chamber went cold, not because of the dying blue star outside, not because of the silence of the human broadcast, not because the fleet was collapsing, but because everyone in that hall finally understood something they should have feared long ago. Humanity does not rise slowly. Humanity rises all at once, with pain, with unity, with fire. Far in the void, a lone alien soldier aboard a drifting warship looked at the eclipse glowing in the darkness. His voice cracked as he whispered to himself, "They are not coming for victory. They are coming for justice." And justice was always sharper than revenge. The fleet floated helpless. The eclipse hovered silently. And the galaxy realized that this was only the beginning. Humanity had just opened its eyes. The storm had only taken its first breath. And soon, it would roar. The collapse of the elite fleet sent tremors through every corner of the galaxy. What the galactic rulers believed to be their strongest shield, their pride, their proof of control, now drifted helplessly like broken metal leaves scattered across the void. The wreckage did not burn. It simply floated, silent and cold, as if the universe itself was mourning the arrogance that brought it here. Inside the Crystal Dominion Hall, the rulers stared with wide eyes, their skins pale, their crowns trembling from the shockwave of fear. For the first time in centuries, someone had pushed back against them. And not just someone, humanity. Emperor Zaltor slammed his hand against the arm of his throne, but the blow lacked strength. His anger was hollow, filled more with fear than rage. "This cannot be." Humans do not possess this power. They cannot simply dismantle our greatest fleet as if it were nothing. His voice cracked, betraying the fear he tried to hide. Ministers exchanged nervous looks. Generals avoided eye contact. Guards stood frozen, gripping their weapons with sweaty hands. Every being in the hall felt the same painful truth digging inside their hearts. Power was shifting, and they no longer stood at the top. Varluin, the frail old advisor, stepped forward slowly. His eyes glimmered with sadness, not victory. Emperor, this is what happens when injustice reaches a breaking point. You struck innocent explorers. You broke the trust of those who value unity. Humans do not attack in anger, but when they do rise, they rise with the strength of their entire species. You have awakened something you were not prepared to face. Zaltor glared at him, but the advisor's words sank deep. The hall grew colder. Shadows stretched longer. Even the dying blue star outside looked dimmer, as if it were ashamed of witnessing the arrogance inside this hall. Without another word, Zaltor ordered reinforcements. Armies were mobilized. Dreadnoughts left their hangars. Entire sectors went into lockdown. But no matter how many fleets he moved, every alien commander felt the same knot twisting in their stomachs. They were preparing for a storm they could not see, against an enemy they no longer understood. While the rulers panicked, the eclipse moved toward the Crystal Dominion, the heart of the ruler's empire. It did not rush. It did not fire. It drifted silently like a shadow sliding between worlds. Every planet it passed fell silent, watching this massive human ship glide through space with a calmness that felt more dangerous than any roar. Citizens whispered prayers. Soldiers stared from behind windows, unsure whether to fear or admire this ship. Some swore they felt the eclipse looking at them. Others felt as if it carried the grief of all of humanity within its silent hull. Inside the eclipse stood Admiral Mira Hale, the woman who had taken command of the Terran response. Her eyes were steady, deep, and filled with heartbreaking determination. The death of the 20 explorers had weighed heavily on her shoulders. She remembered their faces, their dreams, their families. Humanity did not lose soldiers, they lost loved ones. And that pain shaped every decision she made. Her voice was calm as she spoke to her officers. We do not destroy worlds. We do not harm civilians. We dismantle the tyrants who murdered our people. Today, the ruler's end. Officer Juno nodded, tears shining in her eyes. Admiral, why do they fear us so much? Mira looked at the glowing map of the galaxy. Because they never understood us. They think strength is dominance. They think unity is weakness. They think fear is control. But humans are built differently. When one human falls, 1,000 rise. And when someone hurts our own, the entire species stands together. Her words echoed through the ship, filling everyone with a deep, emotional power. They were not fighting for territory. They were not fighting for revenge. They were fighting for dignity, for justice, for the memory of the innocent. Finally, the eclipse arrived at the borders of the Dominion capital, a world protected by hundreds of defense towers and thousands of warships. But the closer the human ship came, the more alien soldiers trembled. They had seen the fleet collapse. They had heard the silent broadcasts. They knew firing at the eclipse was suicide. Yet they also knew that disobedience meant punishment from the rulers. Fear trapped them between two storms, one external, one internal. The rulers watched from their floating hall, panic twisting their faces. Thousands of alarms screamed through the palace. Their strongest weapons charged uselessly. Their commanders shouted conflicting orders. Everything smelled of fear. Then the hall vibrated. A soft rumble. Barely a whisper, but enough to turn every head. The crystal walls shimmered, then parted as if welcoming a guest. Floors rippled like water. Light bent, and within seconds, metallic shadows flowed inside the throne room. Silent human boarding drones shaped like liquid steel, crawling across walls, ceilings, and pillars, entering without breaking a single piece of architecture. The rulers stumbled backward, gasping, shouting in terror. One by one, the drones surrounded the 12 thrones. One by one, the rulers trembled. Then the hall doors opened. Admiral Mira Hale walked in. Not with weapons drawn. Not with anger. Not with pride. She walked with the silence of grief, the silence of justice, the silence of a mother mourning her children. Her boots echoed softly on the crystal floor as thousands of alien guards froze in place, unable to raise their weapons because something in her calm presence told them they would die before taking a single shot. Emperor Zaltor stared at her with trembling lips. Human, this is treason. You dare step into. Mira raised a single hand, and he fell silent. She didn't use force. She didn't use power. She used truth. You attacked peace, she said softly, her voice carrying more weight than any weapon. You attacked explorers who sought knowledge, not war. You struck without warning. You broadcasted their deaths. And when humanity mourned, you mistook silence for fear. She stepped closer. But silence was our preparation. Silence was our unity. Silence was your final warning. Zaltor's throat tightened. His hands shook so badly that his crown slipped from his head and clattered onto the floor. None of the rulers bent to pick it up. Power was slipping from their hands like sand. Mira looked each of them in the eyes. Today your rule ends. Not by conquest, not by destruction, but by truth. The drones surrounded them, projecting holograms of their crimes. Every planet they enslaved, every species they exploited, every life they crushed to maintain their thrones. Billions across the galaxy watched the broadcast as their so-called rulers stood exposed, trembling like scared children. For the first time, the galaxy saw the truth. It was not humanity that should have feared them. It was they who should have feared humanity. Because humanity did not fight for power. Humanity fought for justice. Humanity fought for each other. And now, the rulers finally understood the price of awakening a united human race. The entire galaxy watched the broadcast in stunned silence as the 12 galactic rulers stood surrounded by shimmering human drones, their crimes displayed like living shadows on the crystal walls. Worlds that had once bowed to these rulers now stared at them with disbelief, with anger, and with a strange new feeling, hope. For the first time in generations, oppressed species saw the chains around their lives breaking, not by their own strength, but by the justice of a species that refused to let cruelty stand. Inside the throne hall, Emperor Zaltor trembled violently. His once golden armor felt heavy like stone. The power that had carried him for centuries suddenly felt meaningless, as holograms of enslaved species flashed before him. Crying children, burning villages, tortured planets. His throat tightened until he could barely breathe. He had forced the galaxy to kneel, and now he stood exposed before all of them, powerless. Admiral Mira Hale stepped forward with slow, quiet footsteps that filled the chamber with more fear than any weapon. Her expression remained calm, but her eyes burned with the grief of 20 explorers who never returned home. Humanity did not forget. Humanity did not forgive injustice. Humans carried their dead inside their hearts like fire. And now that fire burned through the hall. Around the galaxy, billions of civilians broke into tears watching Mira speak. A father on a mining moon whispered, "They're doing this for us." A mother in a refugee camp held her child tightly and said, "Humans, they fight for everyone." A young alien soldier forced into the ruler's army dropped his weapon, feeling strength for the first time not from fear, but from courage given by outsiders. Mira faced the rulers and spoke clearly, her voice shaking the hall without raising in volume. "Today, the galaxy witnesses your judgment, not by humans alone, but by every life you harmed." She gestured, and holographic windows expanded, showing faces of representatives from dozens of oppressed species. Farmers, workers, survivors who had never been allowed to speak. Now their voices filled the hall with raw emotion. "You took our land. You killed our people. You stole our children. You used fear like a weapon against us. Today we choose freedom." The rulers shrank further with every voice. Their pride died one word at a time. They tried to look away, but the drones lifted their chins gently, forcing them to face the truth of what they had done. For the first time ever, the rulers understood they were not gods. They were criminals hiding behind thrones made of suffering. The galaxy shook with collective emotion as the testimonies continued. Even human soldiers aboard the Eclipse felt tears forming as they listened. It did not matter what species these people were. Their pain was familiar. Their stories echoed the same truth. Cruelty ruled for too long, and now justice had come. Mira finally raised her hand, and the hall grew silent again. "Humanity does not destroy worlds," she said softly, her voice filled with pain and resolve. "And we will not destroy you, but we will no longer allow your rule. You will answer for every life taken. You will face judgment from those you harmed." The rulers collapsed to their knees, not from force, from the unbearable weight of truth. But even as the galaxy watched this historic moment, something darker stirred deep in the void. A hidden transmission flickered through restricted channels, an encrypted message from the last loyal forces of the rulers. Their final weapon, the Doomsday Cannon, had been activated. It was a monstrous machine buried inside a dying star, capable of firing a beam strong enough to vaporize an entire planet from light years away. A weapon so dangerous that even the rulers feared using it. Yet now, in their desperation, they unleashed it toward Earth. In secret control rooms across a burning star, loyalists screamed commands. "Fire now! Destroy their home! Make humanity kneel!" Their hands shook with rage, not honor. They were not fighting for survival. They were fighting out of hatred for a species that refused to submit. The cannon roared to life, pulling power from the collapsing star around it. Its core glowed with violent energy as ancient machinery screamed under pressure. The beam formed slowly, a burning spear of death aimed directly at Earth. On the Eclipse, Officer Juno gasped as warning symbols lit the bridge. "Admiral, they're firing a doomsday weapon at Earth." Time seemed to freeze for everyone aboard. Myra's face hardened, pain tightening her jaw. Earth was more than a planet. It was home for billions, history for uncountable generations, the heart of humanity. If that beam reached Earth, everything would end. Humanity would lose not just their people, but their soul. "Prepare for quantum leap," Mira ordered quietly. The Eclipse reacted instantly. Its shadowy hull split open in glowing silver veins. The space around it warped like reality itself was bending. For a heartbeat, the massive ship vanished into a tear in space, leaving behind nothing but the echo of a silent pulse. In the next heartbeat, the Eclipse appeared behind the Doomsday Cannon just as the beam launched. The cannon fired, a blinding spear of starfire burning through the void toward Earth. Planets trembled from its energy. Stations flickered. Even the blue star in the Dominion sky dimmed from the force. But the beam never reached Earth. The Eclipse moved in front of it, activating a shield so bright and beautiful that even distant worlds saw the flash. The shield caught the beam, bending it, absorbing it, taming it. Space shook. Time quivered. Every human aboard clenched their fists, holding their breath. The Eclipse did not break. The shield did not fall. Humanity stood between destruction and their home, unmovable. As the last echo of the beam faded, Mira sent one final message to the Loyalists, to the rulers, to the entire galaxy. Her voice was soft, calm, deadly truthful. "This ends now." The cannon's core overheated instantly. Loyalists screamed, running toward exits that no longer opened. Machinery cracked, light erupted, and then the entire weapon collapsed inward like a dying star swallowing itself. The explosion was silent in the vacuum of space, but everyone who saw it felt the shock deep inside their chest. The rulers watched helplessly as their final weapon destroyed itself. Their last hope died. Their last threat vanished. Their last lie fell apart. And the galaxy understood the truth. Humanity had not come to conquer. Humanity had come to end cruelty. Humanity had come to protect. The Doomsday Cannon's collapse sent a silent shock through the galaxy. In distant systems, people stood frozen before their screens, staring as the weapon meant to destroy Earth died by its own rage. The explosion rippled into the void like a falling star mourned by no one. Those who once feared the galactic rulers now felt something new rising inside their hearts. Courage wrapped in awe. For the first time in countless years, the galaxy realized that terror no longer ruled them. Justice did. Inside the Crystal Dominion Hall, the 12 rulers collapsed into their thrones, their faces drained of color. They looked less like leaders and more like ghosts sitting in chairs too large for their shrinking souls. Everything they built, fear, power, cruelty, had cracked before their eyes. Their fleets had fallen. Their lies were exposed. Their secret weapon destroyed itself. And a single human ship, carrying a silent promise of justice, stood unbroken at the end of it all. Admiral Mira Hale walked slowly toward the center of the hall as the floor beneath her glowed with soft blue light. She did not come with chains. She did not come with weapons. She came with truth, and truth alone made even the strongest of the rulers tremble. The drones surrounding the thrones shifted, casting long shadows that danced across crystal walls covered with the memories of suffering the rulers had caused. Every image carved deeper into their guilt. Zaltor tried to rise, but his legs shook like brittle metal. His once powerful voice cracked as he whispered, "Humans do not understand rule. You cannot control the galaxy." Mira did not look angry. She looked heartbroken. "We do not want to rule the galaxy." Her calm words struck harder than any blade. "We never wanted power," she continued. "We wanted peace. We wanted exploration. We wanted unity. But you killed our people, peaceful explorers who never raised a weapon. And when we mourned, you celebrated." Her voice softened even more, yet it echoed across the hall like thunder. This was never about conquest. This was about ending cruelty. All 12 rulers lowered their heads. For the first time, they saw humanity clearly, not as a young species to control, not as a threat to silence, but as a force driven by emotion deeper than any weapon. Humanity fought not for dominance, but for dignity, everyone's dignity. Across the galaxy, billions watched as Mira made her final declaration. The age of fear is over. The age of justice begins now. With those words, the drones activated a system humanity had secretly brought, the Galactic Tribunal Network. Thousands of shimmering beams shot upward from the hall, carrying evidence, testimonies, and the ruler's crimes to every system. A message spread instantly. Each world harmed by the rulers may now decide their fate. It was not humanity's judgment. It was the galaxy's judgment. On distant planets, cheers erupted. Tears flowed. Bells rang. Children embraced their parents. Species who had not smiled in centuries felt light return to their hearts. They were not alone anymore. They never had been. Humanity had simply waited for the right moment to show their true strength. Inside the hall, one of the youngest rulers, barely a century old, fell to his knees. "Why?" he whispered. "Why risk everything for people who are not your own? Why fight for us?" Mira kneeled beside him, her voice warm with the weight of humanity's spirit. "Because pain does not belong to one species. Because injustice anywhere threatens fairness everywhere. Because we remember our own history, and we refuse to let others suffer the way we once did." The young ruler began to sob, the first tears the hall had seen in ages. But as the galaxy celebrated, a soft alert chimed in the eclipse. Officer Juno glanced at her display and gasped. "Admiral, something is happening to the Dominion core star." The cannon's collapse triggered a chain reaction. "The star is destabilizing." The hall trembled. Crystal pillars cracked. The windows flickered as the blue star outside pulsed violently, its surface boiling like a wounded beast. If the star collapsed, the entire Dominion capital and everyone inside would be swallowed by the explosion. Zaltor screamed, "We are doomed! This is your fault. You brought this upon." Mira cut him off with a single gesture. "No, this is still your doing. But we do not abandon lives, not even yours." She tapped her wrist communicator. "Prepare full evacuation for all civilians on the Dominion capital. Deploy Terran rescue ships immediately." Her officers hesitated. "Admiral, we may not make it in time." "We will," she said quietly, "because humanity does not leave people behind." Within minutes, Terran rescue cruisers burst through hyperspace, their silver hulls glowing as they descended toward the planet. They picked up civilians, soldiers, and enslaved species, all without asking allegiance, without discrimination. They even rescued guards who had aimed weapons at humans minutes earlier. Humanity saved even those who once feared them, even those who hated them, even those who tried to destroy them, because that was their strength. That was their difference. Inside the hall, Mira guided the rulers toward the evacuation pods. Some walked silently, ashamed. Some cried openly. Some whispered apologies that came too late, yet Mira accepted them without judgment. Humanity did not seek revenge. They sought healing. Just as the last drone exited the hall, the blue star erupted with a violent flare. Mira raced into the final escape pod, sealing the doors as the eclipse activated its protective barrier around the entire rescue fleet. Then the star collapsed into itself, sending a blast of pure cosmic fire outward. The barrier shook, cracked, and trembled, but it held. Humanity saved the galaxy from the rulers. Now they also saved the rulers from themselves. When the light finally faded, silence returned. Not the cold silence of fear from before, but the warm silence of relief and new beginnings. Floating safely above the ruined star, Mira Hale broadcasted one final message across the galaxy. Let the new age begin, not under human rule, but under shared freedom. The galaxy belongs to all of us. Billions cheered, billions cried, billions whispered the same truth. Humanity did not become the galaxy's conqueror. Humanity became its protector. And somewhere, a young alien child looked up at the sky and asked his father, "Who are humans really?" His father smiled softly, watching the eclipse fade into the stars. "They are the ones you must never provoke. Not because they seek war, but because they fight for each other and for everyone."